Hello and welcome. This is Heavy Business. I'm Aliyah.
And I'm Curtis.
And today we have on our resident continuous co-host guest, Ian Chainey from STEREOGUM. Thank you so much for coming back on the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be back.
We always like having you on and getting your insight into various topics. And today I wanted to dive into one sort of related to how you write and base your interviews around. A lot of times you base them around kind of unexpected premise, and you like to do interviews that artists haven't done before. So you kind of use different things as jumping off points that aren't necessarily expected. So before I go into like where I wanted to take that, I kind of wanted to ask you, what are the most fun, unexpected premises that you've had to start from in the past?
Oh, geez. I think the last big one I did was I talked to a bunch of bands about their football fandom and trying to figure out how that intersects with just being in a band. Like if you are, as an example, people in Cannibal Corpse, there's a Philadelphia Eagles contingent and there's a Buffalo Bills contingent, and Corpse Grinder is also a Denver Broncos fan. Like, how does that fit together? How do you function in a band when there's all kinds of different fandoms there? So I really like doing that one because it gave people a chance to talk about something that was going to be more than the music. And when you're stuck doing press all day and talking about the albums, you kind of get stuck saying the same thing over and over again. So it's kind of like a breath of fresh air to be able to kind of expound upon these, different topics, such as no one's asked me about the football fandom before. I love to talk about that, and so on and so forth. So it's like a new way to kind of like mine a good interview. I think it that way. Something that's coming up, and I will burn it for this podcast. This is an exclusive, and I absolutely recommend that some band take me up on this. Are you guys familiar with the game Lethal Company?
No.
Okay.
Negative.
There's a game called Lethal Company where you work in partnership to collect trash on a planet and bring it back and earn money that way. It's a collaborative game. And I think it would be hilarious to get bands together and play Lethal Company with them while you interview them.
That sounds like a really fun idea. I mean, and if you're doing something together while you're talking, it's a lot like, it's easier to get an organic conversation going, right?
100%. Folks, my email is open. If anyone wants to play Lethal Company with us, let's do it.
Well, there you go.
I'm actually reading about it right now, just in case I want to pitch you on this, Ian.
Well, maybe you'll find the right band for that, Curtis.
Maybe, I don't know. This is an interesting looking game, that's for sure.
So kind of on that same note of a breath of fresh air, something that's kind of talked about a lot, or somewhat at least, in the DIY music promotion space is the idea that bands should be sharing personal stuff on their social media, whether that is their favorite movies or other bands that they like, or they went to a concert together, or they had this other unrelated activity that they did, posting about it, getting people to talk and build community around their music. And I think sometimes the plot can get a little lost. What are your thoughts on the kinds of things that bands could share on their social media and not lose the plot, or how not to lose the plot?
It's interesting. I was listening to a Twitch streamer talk about something similar the other day. His name is Little Aggie. He's a soul streamer. And he was saying that when you're streaming, you need to pick like one or two things to do. And you can't be a variety streamer or you're just never going to grow big. So I think if, as a band, if you pick one or two things outside of your music to talk about and then kind of like build community around that, then I think that'd be more successful than just kind of like blowing the doors open and just saying like every little thing, like, hey, we like this, we like this, we like this, we like this. And that way you're kind of building more of a community around like a few discrete things instead of just like going whole hog, just, airing everything about yourself, which I think would be tough to have people, align their own interests with that. Like, what do you guys think though? Like when you're getting something ready for PR and you want to do something a little out of the box, like, what are you looking for basically?
Well, I can tell you what I'm looking for. I want them to focus on the music mainly, personally. Well, with the indie bands, at least. The bigger bands are a different story, but the smaller bands, excuse me, the ones that nobody really knows about, in my own opinion, if you focus on the music, that's the important thing there. But if it's like a Cannibal Corpse or it's like a Blood Incantation or something like that, like people want to know a little bit more, and they want to go into a little bit more in depth from what I can tell. Like Decibel has that feature Kill Screen where they talk about video games. That's usually good for bands that are of a bigger size. Or mid-range size, because there's only so much you can ask a band or talk about at first other than their music without it getting dull and interesting. Like, I don't give a fuck what some indie band's favorite breakfast food is. I just don't, and I don't think most people do either. So, or their favorite book. Like, it can build community, but for PR purposes, focus on the music, in my opinion, at first when you're smaller. But like mid-range bands or bands that are a little bit well known, I think you can then go into the more personal stuff. That's my own opinion. I don't know what Aliyah thinks, but
yeah, I would say I'm pretty much on the same page with that. It's kind of hard to deter. I really do kind of go along with that thought process of like nobody cares about that until they care, like about you. So the most important thing to be leading with is always your music. And the way that some bands will incorporate other fandoms is maybe they'll do a cover of something from a video game or an anime or a movie or something like that. That's a great way to incorporate it, I think. And that way you can connect with those fans and build something meaningful. But yeah, like when it comes to like your favorite sports teams, that's kind of an exception, I think, because sports teams are something that's so universal. And that's something people will love to connect on and share some camaraderie and or beef over. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a balance.
I have one other thing I want to add to that, though, is I think sometimes jobs or something like that could also be interesting when they're new. Like Holly, for example, is studying 2 different subjects. One of them is gender studies, and she's put that into her promo because, she's learning about it, and I know lots of people have asked her about it as a result of that. Sophia's studying law. Lots of people have asked her about that as well. It ties in beautifully with both their music. So I think if there's an interesting like school thing or a job, it can work too. But I don't know. It's my opinion.
On that point, Curtis, I have this theory that a lot of people don't know what the most interesting thing is about them.
They don't.
That's very true, I think. They don't.
How do both of you tease that out when you're trying to do PR for a band?
You almost can't. You fucking can't. You just gotta figure it out. You can't. You just can't do it. Like, if I was to tell like Aliyah, okay, so let me ask you this question. Like, if someone said to you, what's the most interesting thing about one of your band members? How would you figure that out? Like, you know all of them, so you can kind of, but you know what I'm saying. Like, what would you kind of go as your criteria for that?
I think it would have to be something that is a combination of having a level of nicheness to it, a level of specificity to it, and then also an element of universality to it. Something that other people will connect with and relate to, but isn't so general and generic that you could say it about anybody, Do
you think they would know themselves, or do you think you'd have to kind of do what Ian says, tease it out of them?
I think Ian's correct. I think most people don't know what the most interesting thing about themselves is. So yeah, I think a lot of people would benefit from probably asking close friends or family about that.
I like that.
And the most interesting thing about yourself may not be something that you want to speak about publicly.
That's a very good point.
So in that case, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to use that to publicize your music if you don't want to share it publicly.
Yeah, I think one of the other challenges too is just finding like a landing space to be able to like disseminate the alternative things that you're doing besides just your music too. Because like I know there's a lot of publications that aren't as friendly to that kind of stuff as I am, perhaps, when it comes to writing weird profiles about things. Like just off the top of my head for like things I'm looking for in the future, it's like if you're a band that's interested in running, I want to talk to you. I would love to find out what is the best music to run to. We can get some good science about that.
You know, if you go on Twitter, I've seen people that are in bands speak about this. I wish I could remember off the top of my head.
There's a little running community in metal that not many people talk about, but there's definitely marathon metal out there.
I am a runner, but I'm not a marathon runner.
Yeah, but you know, the loneliness of the long distance runner, it's out there. I'm sure there's more out there. So I would love to talk to people about that. One thing I got on the back burner is if you've ever had an interesting experience playing a show and then weird music comes on over the PA between your sets, I want to talk to you about that. So, you know, there's definitely like different angles to try to go and attack this stuff. And I think it's kind of like what we were just talking about. Like, I don't think this would be something that you would necessarily just put in like your PR to talk about, because like, why would you? Because it just seems so like uninteresting. But if there's somebody that's out there that's like receptive to that stuff and wants to talk about that stuff, I think it's worth kind of like looking out there to see where you can try to position that material, wouldn't you say? If there's like a specialty blog or something that has like an affinity for coffee or something, and you're big on coffee, like I would pitch to them, no problem, right?
Metal and coffee, I think that would go over really well, actually.
Yeah.
But okay, so here's the problem that I have with all this. So a lot of times when we get pitched by journalists to do something weird like this, the bands go, "Fuck you, not interested. I only want to talk about the music." So this does happen.
I don't really know if that's relevant to our conversation.
True. Okay, I won't bring it up.
What I really wanted to dive into more was bands using this on their social media, more so than just like actual PR and formal stuff. A lot of times bands will use this as kind of filler, quote unquote, content for their social media, especially because there's a lot of pressure from all of the hustle communities online. You should be posting such and such number of times a week. Well, what the heck are you going to post when you are writing music or recording music? You don't have anything new to promote. You're not playing shows. You're if you're in a writing stage or something, or in between releases. So I think that's when bands can fall into this sort of habit, and maybe falling into the temptation of sharing things that aren't super helpful or beneficial to be shared. So kind of going on that, what do you think are the things that people connect on most outside of music?
Would you think it'd be conducive to think of mining that side of your personality, almost like you're building like a dating app?
Interesting.
And just approaching it that way, where it's like you're not like, obviously, you know, you're not sharing everything about you via the dating app. It's gonna be like the most like attractive things about you. It's gonna be the things that relate to people the most, right? So if it's not music, then what we already talked about sports, what movies you're into, right? Food, TV shows.
Food, if you're a foodie, though, it's got to be
True.
like to a high level of interest, right?
True.
Right. You know, like, I mean, looking at Instagram, it's hard to avoid everyone's like pets accounts now, right?
Yep.
I know, like what was the band that has that awesome dog that goes in the van with them. Is that Gorilla Toss? I think it's Gorilla Toss. Yeah. Somebody fact check me on that later.
Curtis and I both have the same expression of we do not know, but
only dog band I know is Sixth Sense.
What kind of doggo do they have?
They got like a mascot. Oh no, wait a minute. That's a bear. That's Sixth Sense. Never mind.
Yeah, that's a bear. And it's a mascot. It's not an actual pet.
Never mind. Yep.
Man, get yourself a dog mascot. Dog mascots.
There is somebody with a dog mascot on. I'm going to look it up later. I was thinking it was Sixth Sense, but it's not. They got a bear.
Joe Rogan's dog has an Instagram account.
Does he? What's its name? I got to follow him now.
I don't remember. Just Google it. Google Joe Rogan's dog. You'll find it. So yeah, I mean, I have an example I want to bring up, and then maybe you can bring up some examples of bands who've done this well that you think have done this well. So I was thinking of Simone Simmons from Epica recently because she has a beauty lifestyle blog and she's also a photographer. And she publicizes both of those things, but they're not ever published on her band page. They're just kind of other ways that people can connect with her and relate to her. And I think that she's done it in a really classy way and in a way that she still maintains privacy about her private life. She's not really sharing anything that's... Everything she shares is still very professional, I would say. So that to me is a great example. And I wanted to just ask you guys if you can think of any good examples of that type of thing.
Well, I can think of one right off the top of my head. Actually, no, I can't because they don't do it quite that way. So this is a very tough question.
Well, it doesn't have to be exactly that way. What were you thinking?
Well, what I was thinking is like, for example, Lindsay will do the makeup and she'll do all sorts of different things, but that's just on her one account. She's not separating them out. Right.
I don't think you have to separate them out. That's just how Simone does it.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I thought that's what you were asking. That's why I was saying that. But yeah, she comes right off the top of my head because she does all those different things. Plus she posts the cats sometimes. Her going to show. Yeah, she does all sorts of a mishmash of various different things like that. I think she does a pretty good job of both personal and professional on her accounts personally.
Curtis has also just discovered that Joe Rogan's dog has an encyclopedic knowledge about polka. So that's also...
He has an
really?
out there.
I did not know that.
Yeah, but I think what the thing that we're touching on here is that if you are going to go this path, it has to be something that you're authentically passionate about, right? Otherwise, it's not going to...
Absolutely.
Otherwise, this is not going to work and people are going to like sniff it out a mile away. Like if you're not into trains, like I wouldn't recommend you going to corner like the train spotting market as a band or anything because people are just going to be like, what? What's going on here? But I think the thing that what fans want to interact with and engage with is like the certain humanizing factors that show that like you're more than just this cog in a band, right? That you're this person that has other interests outside this stuff, and they don't necessarily even have to be into that stuff. I think people are just very into other people who are passionate about the stuff that they like to do. Like that's an attractive quality in a person. At least that's what I tell myself when I list the metal bands I like on the dating app. So, you know.
I have a thing I wanted to go over if this can kind of pertain to it. So like I think the key point though is authenticity though, because there's also a lot of people, like Ian was just saying, was a lot of times it seems like it's fake when people do this. That's part of the thing that I think kind of bothers me with the sharing of the personal stuff. It seems very staged a lot of times, like, oh, I'm so in love with so and so, and you can tell like they fight all the fucking time or whatever, or I'm really into this hobby, or I love my kids, and as a fact that's absent parent or whatever, right? So I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I mean I think that's part of the issue is when people are trying to be authentic, but they're being fake authentic. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of like a real danger bands need to watch out for.
Authenticity is kind of like using the force.
Yeah.
Like there's no try. You do.
Yeah.
You have to truly be authentic. And that's something to strive. I mean, yeah, it is something to strive for, but
like you'll see some bands, you know, famous people taking pictures with their kids, and you can tell they're not having a fucking good time. And it's like, oh, I love my kids, and here we are at Disney World. They're all like fucking grimacing together, and like, you know, yeah. Anyways.
I get what you're saying. I think what it comes down to is it's got to be something you're truly deeply interested in, genuine interest, and having a high level of interest in it. Like when you brought up food, we're not talking about just sharing your breakfast plate every day. It's like if you're a foodie and you're really passionate about interesting food, then you can share that part of your personality. Like, Ian, I think you were going to say something. Sorry.
I was going to talk about, here's something that's slightly related. I kind of want to get how both of you feel about this. How do you feel about bands turning their social media accounts into meme accounts and sharing memes on them?
I don't mind personally. Sorry, Aliyah, go ahead.
As I personally, I think it's healthy to interject a meme here and there, because it shows that you don't take yourself too seriously. But whether or not it's beneficial to a band to become a meme account, basically, is arguable. It just kind of depends if people actually care about your music, like we were kind of talking about to begin with. You know, I've seen bands do it to a point where nobody really knows about their music or cares about their music. They just follow the account because it's a funny account. And I've seen it go the other way, where the fans really cared about the music and they loved the memes as well. And it helped to build community and build a bond between the musician and their fans. So I've seen it go both ways, really.
And I think it's kind of like the same with politics. The example, like bands will do the exact same thing with memes, except it'll be a political account. Nothing about the music. Like, especially recently, in recent months, that's been happening certain times on both sides. So, you know, it's like you kind of got to have the mix there. I think, like Aliyah said, you kind of got to have it where the music is still being focused on. But if you're just focusing on memes or politics, it doesn't really help push the music, which we assume that's what you want to be here for, right? So
here's the $10,000 question. At what point do you pull the ripcord on this strategy and decide it's not working?
I have opinions on this, but I want to hear Aliyah's thoughts first before I dive into mine.
What, like, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're asking with that question. Is like, is it after you've made 10 posts of that nature and nobody's responding, then you stop doing it, like a specific number? Or I think it's whenever you notice it's not working. It's like, if you notice it's either not connecting with people, or it's connecting with the wrong people, or it's breeding the wrong kind of community or comment sections on your page that you don't feel authentically represent who you are and the community that you want to build around your music, that's probably when you stop.
I have to admit that's pretty much what I was thinking. I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough out there doing the social media thing these days, right? I mean, with how everything's, yeah, it is, and it, yeah. I mean, that's. I think that's how we sum up life in 2024, right? Well, it is, and it isn't.
Because here, I have an opinion, and this is probably going to be controversial. So, one thing I noticed, and I'm going to toot Aliyah's horn here, even though she doesn't want me to, and I'm going to just toot it. Sorry, Aliyah.
Bleeping it out.
Bleeping. One thing that bands I noticed that do really well on social media, they seem to take an active interest in their fans even when they're posting, and they'll ask questions or they'll turn it around, and it's not just a big look at me. Shield the Wings is very good at that. So I am tooting your horn on that one. You guys do talk about the songs and stuff. You don't just go a big look at me. You don't. And in my own opinion, the bands that don't, like, you want to promote yourself, but you don't want it to just look like you're being arrogant and like, look at me, look at how great I am type of thing. You want to do that sometimes, but as a general rule, it seems to me that the bands that actually want to communicate with their fans, they have captions that say something like, what do you think about this? Or I love this album, tell me about it, or something like that, while promoting their own work, seem to do better than like, hi, here's a shot of me naked, half naked on the beach, buy my album type of thing, right? So that's my own opinion. I just think if the bands that focus on the fans first versus themselves while still promoting themselves seem to do well.
Curtis is still mad that I tried to plug the last podcast by me being half naked on the beach with some,
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, some strategically placed sandcastles really, kept that being safe for work.
Perfect.
Good marketing plan. I like.
Yeah. So when you're building a sense of community and you're thinking about, I'm trying to think about the right way to phrase this. When you're building a sense of community, is it better to think of like your band almost as like a club where it's like, here's this thing that we are all have in common, that we're together. It's an us proposition, not like a we the band proposition. Is that kind of would that be a good way to approach also getting your extracurriculars out on social media as well? It's like, hey, is anybody else in this club also down with this stuff? I would love to talk to you about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, it is a lot like that. I mean, you want to connect with fans that are going to connect with your music, right? It's like a mutual cycle, symbiotic relationship. So I love how when we bring you on to interview you end up interviewing us, by the way. Got all these great questions.
He's a co-host.
Yeah, right. Co-host.
Co-host.
But yeah, I think to me that is beneficial. And a lot of times that happens around bands without the band participating in it. Especially like the bigger old time bands, like the fans will kind of connect over, like, for example, Nightwish. They have a huge fantasy element to a lot of their older music, and the fans will connect around that. Or the more recent stuff has a more evolutionary scientific perspective. Some fans will connect around that. So I think that happens organically. It's kind of like surfing. You kind of have to observe the climate and catch the wave.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I was almost thinking about these strategies as being at a party, and you don't know be at the party, and you're just trying to find commonality with like anybody that's out there. Like, obviously, you're all in the same space because you're at the party, and there's that. But then you're just going around talking with people like, you like Cannibal Corpse? Oh, really? You do like Cannibal Corpse? Okay, cool. Let's talk. Let's get down with that.
I do things a little bit differently, but I'll let you finish what you're saying, Ian.
I'm done. Lay it on me.
Well, the way I always kind of look at it, like I can't say I'm like an expert or anything at social media, but the one thing I've always noticed is like if you go into social media with the intention of like having a conversation versus trying to be noticed, you see it seems to work best, and that's not as a tactic or a strategy. Like if you look at social media as a tactic and a strategy versus like you're trying to actually make friends and actually build relationships, it's different. Because like a music marketing guru can tell you all the right tricks, all the right strategies, all the right tactics, but the intention is wrong, right? So a lot of bands will put their steps into practice and end up pissing people off because the intention is wrong, because it's not focused on building actual relationships. It's focused on trying to get a stream or something for the band versus trying to like build a broader fan base and community, if that makes sense. Like there's one individual in particular who I will not name, but most people probably know who I'm talking about because I've been associated with this person in the past, who speaks a lot of the right language on things. But the problem is the bands who try to implement will then do it in such a way that it's a money grab, or they're trying to just get attention for themselves versus actually authentically trying to build community. Like, for example, a strategy by many gurus is to have a podcast like this and to invite people on so that way you can get streams. So like, Ian, how many times have I pitched you directly for anything since you've been a co-host here? 3 times maybe? tops.
Yeah, maybe if that. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not using this for myself. I'm a PR guy. I could probably ask you for about a zillion favors right now for all those times that you've been on here and help to promote you, but I don't, because my intention is not to do that.
Put air quotes around promoting Ian.
Well, you know what I mean. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Like if I was implementing the tactics, you know what I mean, I would be hitting Ian up for favors. Hey, Ian, I've had you on the podcast. You know, like, but that would be like a social media guru tactic. You know what I mean? Versus like authentically having people on, having discussions. Because the reason why we want to have you on here is because you do good conversations like this. You also are have a lot of great ideas on things. Not to hit you up, not to pitch you later. You know what I mean? It's like the intention is different. Like you can have all the right steps, but the intention is off. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, it does. It actually reminds me back when I was doing stand-up, the idea was that you could have the best material possible, but if you're not having a conversation with the audience, it's never going to land.
It's not. It's just totally not. And that's the problem with a lot of the marketing guru people is they'll tell you the right steps, but your intention is off and they're always looking at it from the wrong viewpoint. And then the way that you actually can build a fan base, like ask Aliyah. Aliyah's, how many of you guys got for Spotify listeners? Like 9,000, 10,000 a month or something stupid like that after 2 years almost?
I mean, I think it's a little over 8,000 right now.
Yeah. Aliyah doesn't use any fucking tactics. She just doesn't. Well, I mean, you obviously have a strategy for social media, but the intention isn't to go, you know what I mean? It happened organically is what I'm saying, right? So, but like, for example, I've seen other people, they'll go and they'll listen to a whole bunch of podcasts by a social media person and they'll have all this plan and they'll put it out beautifully and stuff like that. And they might have a sudden peak in numbers, but then it always dies off because they're not authentic. You know, they won't answer fan DMs, they won't respond to comments. You know, and if they do, it's just like buy my shit, you know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but that's kind of like the viewpoint I have.
No, it does. When I think of artists and labels that are very good at social media, it's just they're having the conversation with the people that follow them, and then everything else is like a byproduct of that, right? Like I'm thinking of like Chatpile, Fia Productions, Eve Six. It all kind of feels like a club that you're a part of. And anything that is, you know, outside the scope of that, and kind of the things that we're talking about, these extracurricular things that you're doing as part of your life, are all byproducts of the conversation of like you having with somebody else. Versus like, hey, you do this thing, that's cool. Here's what I'm doing. This is out there, and then you're kind of breaching that in an authentic way. It's obviously something that you like because you're just keeping the conversation going with fans. And I think kind of not to put a bow on this, but that's like the best way to do it. Like you just find your niche via the conversation that you have with the people that like your stuff.
Barry Ann's a great example. I just want to shout her out on that. That was a very good pick because she does the animals and she's also got like the anti-fascist stuff and she talks about black metal all day and she talks a lot about dogs and other animals, but mainly dogs. Tea sometimes I think too, if I'm not mistaken, but very good example. Yeah, very good example.
Yeah, and I mean, those are all things that have passionate cohorts, like followers. Like, I mean, you talk about tea, that's a whole nerddom right there. Like, it's very fascinating.
Tea metal, my inbox is open to you. Let's get something going.
A metal tea party.
You know, Holly's British, so I'm going to have her contact you in the next couple of days since we have this recorded that you want to talk to someone about tea.
Yeah, what do we call that? Do I take my tea black metal?
That's pretty good.
I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, we're talking about so many it kind of goes a lot deeper than what I initially kind of posed, the question I initially posed, but it does go that deep where it's thinking about how you present yourself on social media. If it doesn't come from a place of depth and sincerity and authenticity, it's a lot of times it can, and with, if you don't have the right motives, a lot of times it can just come off as very transparent and people know that you're just trying to use them. So,
but that can be faked for a little while, but people always find out at some point.
100%. I mean, we're surrounded by brand speak like constantly. It's almost like the lingua franca of the time. So just to be open and honest, but not in a way where you're exposing stuff that could be detrimental to be getting doxxed and so on and so forth. Not to take this into a darker realm, but just being like open and honest about your interests and just having a conversation. Like that's like whenever I come across that in the socials, I'm just like, okay, cool. This is an actual human who has thoughts. I love this. I'm into this person. I can already relate, even if we don't relate on much regarding music and so on and so forth.
One thing I think also you generally want to avoid is complaining about things, anything, complaining about life. I'm not referring to anything that anyone in present has done. I'm thinking about this abstractly, so I'm sorry if you feel like I'm calling out.
I wrote a bitchy tweet the other day. That's why I thought I was being called out. Okay.
No, I'm not calling anybody out. I just think that there's so much negativity on social media that I don't think it's a good place to air those things. Like airing the things that are causing you suffering and things like that. That's meant to be shared, probably, in my opinion, that's meant to be shared with the people closest to you and not publicly aired. And I know that's kind of a controversial position to take according to some people, because some people, they think they should be able to get support from everybody on their friends list, right, when they're going through something hard. But I think it's really something that should be, especially from a band perspective, right? I'm not talking about your personal page, but like especially from a band perspective, complaining about things, especially complaining about like lack of streams, lack of sales, things like that, it doesn't make you look good, and it's not going to help.
Well, I think one of the reasons why people do that is because sometimes it will get interaction, but then the problem again, it comes back down to you get that quick spike, and then no one really wants to hear from you again because you just keep bitching and bitching and bitching and bitching. So,
and is it the right kind of interaction, right?
If it leads to more positivity, of course, but in this case, no. It's not. Like nobody wants to fucking listen to anybody fucking bitch for like day after day after day on their social media, unless you're a black metal band. I mean, if you're a black metal band and you want to bitch about fucking, you want to kill someone or something like that, or the blood of Satan or something like that, that might be a different story. I mean, Ian's probably knows a little bit better on that end than I do, but...
What do you think, Ian?
What do you think, Ian? Should black metal bands be able to bitch? Should death metal bands be able to bitch? I think death metal bands should be able to be negative.
Yeah, there was an artist that went that did a TikTok that said she put out this great album and no one was listening to it. I'm like, what's the deal with that? I thought I made this great album. How come more people aren't into it? And it kind of became this weird flashpoint within the community of just like, was she right? Did she just release a bad record? What's going on here? And I think she got some juice just putting that stuff out there. But obviously, that can come back to haunt you in certain respects. And I don't know, like, it really just depends on like what kind of music you're making and like what kind of like your general outlook is on life and like the tenor of your social media as well. Cause like, I would find it weird if, a very sunny power metal band suddenly started complaining about not being able to find parking in downtown or something like that. That kind of like shatters the illusion, right? We're not like running with the elves into the rainbow land anymore. It's like, how dare you give me a jaywalking ticket as I traipse upon, between Broad and Maine.
That could actually be hilarious if they framed it in a fantastical setting.
Framing's got to be the way to do it, like 100%. Yeah. Actually, yeah, that probably would be. If you just play it like you're an absolutely naive elves from the woods and like you're in the city and you just don't understand anything that's happening out there, yeah, I'd be into that for sure.
Well, that's a good example, though, of somebody doing exactly what I said not to do, and it worked out for them. It seemingly, but I guess I don't know. It depends on how was it framed. Was it like complaining, or was it asking a genuine question, like what happened?
It was Bethany Cosentino, who it wasn't like a screed. It was just kind of her just like being open and honest and vulnerable about like, hey, I'm going solo after Best Coast. It didn't work out. What's the deal with this? I thought I made a great record, and just talking about like the nature of the music industry at that point. But she got a lot of blowback from people that were just like, Beth, you made a bad record. That's why no one was buying it. Which I'm sure that was not fun to hear on her side. But then other artists were like having her back and be like, yeah, I experienced the same exact thing. Like, it sucks. Like, where are we as an industry right now?
But the thing is that I hate to keep bringing it back to this, but like you said, that some people told her she did have a bad record. She put out a bad record. And sometimes you need to have honest. I'm not saying that her record was bad. I have no idea. I didn't listen to it. So, but sometimes you need to have honest feedback from people who care.
Well, this is the key question from people who care, because sometimes you'll just get the negativity that you suck just from randos, right? So.
Yeah, you can't listen to randos. They will always be negative online. But people who care about you and you have a relationship with that you can trust, to be honest with you.
This is so off topic, but I'm very interested in this just because we're kind of earing into this this line of thought. How big should your feedback loop be regarding the quality of the material that you're putting out?
My own personal opinion is you should have like 2 or 3 people tops outside of your band.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's like a specific limit on it, but 2 or 3 people is probably a good number, unless you really have a few more people like who you really trust, to be honest with you. But you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen, so.
Because everybody's going to tell you something different too. Because like I know as a fact, I've seen that happen with artists. Like they'll send it to like 30 different people, and like one person's like, "This is mixed too weird. This is this," and then someone else will say something completely different. Someone else will say another thing, and it confuses them. So
I will say we're not talking about. Well, I wasn't talking about getting feedback on your music during the writing stage, or like necessarily getting them feedback on your stuff before you make an album, but like getting feedback when things didn't go like you expected. I guess, I don't know, it could be beneficial to get it earlier than you like before you release an album, but
that's what I was.
They're not writing your record for you, right? You're just asking them to give genuine feedback, and you need to find people that are objective and not going to give you subjective feedback like, "Oh, I don't like this because it's not my kind of music," or it doesn't what I like. It might be like, well, what I liked about your music before was this, and it's not like that anymore. So it needs to be people that can be objective as much as possible.
That you trust, because again, different people are going to have different opinions. A good example would be, Ian, you like the new Obituary album? I have a personal friend that's a reviewer that hated it.
Yeah.
You liked it? He hated it. I think it was on
Sure. I mean, everybody's going to have there's always going to be like extremes of opinion and stuff like that. Yeah, so
exactly.
But when it comes to something like, oh, I dropped an album and it's not making any sales, then you have to ask yourself whether the problem was the music or the marketing, right?
Or both.
So, and sometimes it's both, right?
Yeah.
I love when people give you the advice just to be yourself, and then they're just like, but not this way.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair. I mean, which part of myself is okay to be, right? Well, I've been thinking about this whole marketing thing, and I know we are a music marketing podcast, and it's important how you market your music and how you post on social media and all of this stuff. It's important. And the one thing that kind of leads back into what Curtis was saying earlier, I was actually just listening to Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and he had a preface that he wrote that said something very interesting to me. He says, "Again and again, I therefore admonish my students both in Europe and in America, don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. And it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as a byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen. And the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it."
I like that.
What do you think, Ian?
I concur. I mean, we've said this a bunch of times on the podcast, but the only thing they can control is like when it comes to metal, the quality of your riffs. If you love your riffs, then that's the only thing that you can do. That's the best you can do. People like it, great. People don't like it, oh well. That's the only thing that's under your purview is just the quality of your riffs, and just don't aim for success. Just do what you do to the fullest of your power. I remember there was remember Dustin Hoffman was talking on Inside the Actors Studio, and he was getting advice during The Graduate. And the director on The Graduate, whose name escapes me right now, was saying, like, Dustin, like, whatever he's going to do right now is going to live forever. So just do the best that you think you can do, and like, don't cut corners, and just do it, because it's always going to be out there. And due to the quirks of how recorded music is eternal, like, I think that's the same thing. Like, if you can make the best album that you can or the best song that you can, like, go and do it. Like, that should be your first and foremost thought in your brain. Not like, is this going to be popular? Is this going to capture the spirit of the moment? So on and so forth. Just make the best thing that you can, and everything else is a byproduct of that.
Love that. And on that note, I think we should wrap things up. Thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us again, and can't wait to have you back. And everyone listening, thank you for listening. I know we do not always give you a step-by-step steps to getting 1,000 more streams or whatever, but hopefully you can take our conversations and get something meaningful out of it. And until next time, make like a bull and throw those horns up.